online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey there, Mad Men fans. Welcome back to the Mad Men After Show here on AfterBuzz TV, talking about Season 7, Episode 12, Lost Horizon. I'm Matt Lieberman. Joining me on the panel, Sterling Cates is here.
Hello, hello.
And Joseph Sanfelippo is here.
Nice to be here with you guys.
Yes, unfortunately, Joe Braswell could not join us today. We wish him well, and hopefully he'll be back next week.
It's because he's a bad person.
It's because he's a terrible person with priorities in the wrong place. Because this was a fantastic episode of television. He doesn't get to talk about it.
That's it.
He's the one who loses here.
No soup for him.
That's true. Not even the crab bisque?
No, nothing. None. That is the definition of no soup. We can't just give him some.
All right, that's fair. You're right. You have morals. You have standards.
I'm not just giving that man soup.
Yeah, so the title of the episode, Lost Horizon, relates to the 1933 novel of the same name, which is the first time that the concept of the city of Shangri-La was put out into pop culture. It was later made into a film, I believe, 4 years later by Frank Capra. And the whole episode is really about everyone's satisfaction or lack thereof with McCann Erickson, which is supposed to be this incredible place. Jim Hobart pitched it last week as heaven.
Advertising heaven.
Advertising heaven. But it seems like heaven is not great. In fact, it's full of really terrible people and crappy politics. Doing
really, really terrible things. Mm-hmm. And they don't seem to really care one way or the other if who gets hurt. It's very interesting. It's like it's fun to look at it and see how far SBDC, I'm sorry.
SC and Partners, SCMP.
SCMP moved forward over the last 7 seasons, and then to see how the rest of the world didn't. And McCann Erickson is just like, no. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. I'm not. Who told you could get mad?
Yeah. Well, in comparison to SCMP, it makes McCann Erickson look very much not as progressive as SCMP was. And when we talked about SCMP in the past, we talked about how it's not necessarily the best place to work, especially if you're a woman. But then it compared to McCann Erickson, it looks
downright heavenly.
Yeah,
again,
right, exactly.
Heavenly. Yeah, because Joan's story is one for the ages, and we're going to break that down. But first, I want to talk about Don, who, at the top of this episode, he's winding his way through these narrow freaking corridors. And I really have to appreciate what the production design team did and what the cinematographers did to really make it feel cramped, uncomfortable, confined. Like, there was a beauty and an elegance to how SCNP's office was laid out. It was very open. It was very free. There was a lot of light. And this place looks like a prison. It looks like something mice would run through, which, a lot of offices of the time felt that way. But I kind of got this distinct impression, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about this, that McCann is kind of like one of those large armies that, to attack a problem, they'll just throw wave after wave of men at it until the problem has been extinguished. Versus SC&P, they didn't have that kind of resources. They had to use their brains. They had to use strategy. But this is a company with there were at least like 14 men in that room in the Miller
directors.
Yeah, 14 creative directors, and that was half of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's interesting to watch a company kind of evolve and watch it develop, and they do such a great job here showing, like, being hungry is in a lot of times it's the easy part, right? And then what do you do once you grow big enough that you're not hungry, you're not in danger of folding? And then McCann is what happens when you grow big enough, you're definitely not in danger of folding. You've achieved enough weight as an organization that your weight alone can continue for you to carry business. It's not necessarily about whether or not you had the most creative, interesting pitch. It's about the size of it's about your ad buy.
Yeah.
It's about how much influence you have with the New York Times. It's about
the name behind it. Yeah,
right.
Just coming from McCann is enough is enough said there.
And it's so interesting to see, to see them talk to, to see him talk to Joan, to see what's his name talk to Joan.
Dennis or Ferg?
Dennis. To be like, I don't need the business. You can just see it. Like Avon, okay, fine, I'll lose Avon.
Jim. Jim Hobart, yeah.
It's so fascinating just to kind of get out of that mindset, and it's supposed to be jarring. I think that's the plan. We're supposed to feel that it's almost assaulting.
Mm-hmm. Which is why ultimately Don makes this daring escape, this midday escape. But before he does, I want to talk about a few quick things. First of all, in his office, Don is going to die-hard shippers. I know shipping traditionally in media is just about two people getting together, but people who are obsessed with the idea that Don is going to jump from a window in the finale, well, I'm sure we're clamoring for it as he goes up to that window and he's trying to see where the... Well, I don't even know if he's trying to open it. I feel like he's trying to see where the howling is coming from. And he puts his hands against the howling, stops, he brings it back, and the howling just continues. And it's like, even in this place where it is hermetically sealed and there is no escape, there still is this howling wind that he would have to contend with. And I just thought it was a really great piece of imagery. Then he meets with Jim and Ferg, and he flat out, like, almost forces him to say it. He wants him to say it.
Oh, he does.
Because he worked for 10 years. I love that he talked about the fact that it was 10 years to land this white whale, and now that you're mine, I want you to say that you're mine.
Yes, you have to say it. Absolutely. Yeah. And the impression of him. Oh my God.
Oh my God, what a horrible impression.
Terrible, right.
This is the guy who's very important around here. Ferg is very important around here, and he is the worst impression. He was doing like a Nixon.
It did. It felt like a Nixon.
I wish he was back this week so we could talk to him.
I know. Well, I'm furious that he's not here this week because last week we were treating him, like, oh, you're just being a little unfair. I wanted to slug him.
Yeah.
I wanted to slug him. No wonder he wouldn't tell us what was going on this week, because I would have slugged him right then and there.
Right, yeah.
I gotta say, sometimes we get a little bit juvenile and we blame actors for things they didn't actually do.
I know. It's not him, it's the writers. It's Matthew Weiner, but still, he did a fantastic job at making me hate him, okay? Mm-hmm. I'll give him a compliment.
You know what I loved about it is the way he put the character together was really terrific, because you didn't feel at any point that he as the character felt he was out of line at all.
No.
Right.
Not at all.
What are you guys mad about? I'm doing everything right.
Yeah.
Well, last week when he was here, he talked about that's usually the character he plays on TV anyway. It's kind of the bad guy who is good at being the bad guy. And he did that on One Tree Hill, and I think it's just really natural for him. So.
Yeah. So Don goes up to this diet beer meeting, the first meeting about creating Miller Lite, which I was so fascinated. I wanted to see the meeting. I wanted to see the process. But Don had to be selfish and want to be happy with his life, so he had to leave in the middle of the day. But I want to contrast briefly the actions taken by Don and Joan in this episode, because what Joan is doing, even though it is self-serving to try to get the money that she deserves, the fact is she's been screwed over by this company. She deserves her money. There's no reason why she shouldn't have it. Versus Don, who he's got everything that he wanted. He could still sell this product and have a great time doing it, but then he just up and abandons everyone, abandons the business, abandons his post in the middle of a pitch, something that Joan would not do. The reason why she is trying to get her money is because she demands professionalism above all else, and this is a guy who no longer values it.
I also think there's something to be said for the amount of money involved. I mean, Joan and what Joan had to do to get said money.
Boom! Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's a surprise. Kevin Undergaro,
Ladies and gentlemen,
our executive producer, is here in the studio with us. You want to talk about the episode?
No,
Kev?
I want to talk. First, I want to say to you guys, you're doing such a great job on this show.
Oh, thank you.
I listen every week. I'm a diehard Mad Men fan. I'm sad. I'm beyond sad it's going away, but thank you so much, because it's just great, all of you, the four of you, and I wish Joe was here as well. The other Joe B was here as well. But it's like you guys are just killing it, and you're helping fill in so many gaps for me, and you're not missing much. Nobody's mentioned why Don's got the New York Mets. Just very interesting. Did you see some of the production design stuff?
Yeah, and there was a Mets cap in
Peggy's
office.
Yeah, and just also the outfit changes. Did you see Peggy's green and then her
her
red,
yellow, and then just like
the red.
Oh my god.
Anyway,
it's the most gifable moment maybe in the entire series.
You know, I just hope that we can see a masterpiece like this again. It's beautiful to watch, but about that one point for me, it was, I think I go to what Joe said. Remember, that was blood money. How she got there, and I think in life, when you cut corners or you do something, there's got to be some kind of comeuppance. And he even says that, which was awful. One of the antagonists said to her, you know, and I don't even know what you did.
No, okay.
Right?
First of all, Kevin, I meant to go. This is the second topic, is Joan. But if you want to get into
no, I don't even want to interrupt your show. I just want to say, I just saw you up on the screen and go, oh my God, they're talking Mad Men.
I just had a violent reaction to what you said.
And I was trying to download the show last night so bad because I was jonesing. But by the way, I'm just saying, I think that I'm the big Joan fan. I love that I understand why she had to do what she did, but I just wonder if it isn't the writer, Weiner, or whoever, saying this is kind of like blood money. You know, when you do, you know what I'm saying? When you have to sell your soul, Matt, you know that, right? It's not going to go your way. And we've seen everyone on the show, well, many of them, have in one way or another sold pieces of their soul. And what you guys have hit on is that, you know, when Don dropped his kids off at the house, that was a wonderful, beautiful ending. And, you know, we've had all these great endings. And just like you said, Matt, last week, it was we were all going down to almost have a three-peat in a sense, where it was going to end, where they saved the day, and not this time.
Nope.
Right.
Everyone's falling short, and all the different decisions, it's just hitting everybody. But to me, I was thrilled for her because she got $250 and she never has to see any of them again. Now, it does cost her career, which sucks, but I'd like to think someone as smart as Joan, there's a place for her somewhere.
Oh, 100%.
In the business ecosystem.
There is no one saying that this is the end of her career or her ability to have a career or anything like that. But for me, I violently disagree with your read of The Other Woman back in season 5 and of this episode. I personally see that episode and this episode as just an utter failure on the part of the men in her life who are supposed to treat her as an equal. And her finally standing up for that and wanting to stand up for that and taking the money was the wrong decision that she made for the right reasons.
Let me ask you a question.
I think taking the money was the right decision, because at McCann that's not the place for her to do, because she has sacrificed so much to get to where she was at CMP, and then this is just not the place, because none of these guys that work there are ever going to respect a woman. They're way too far along, and to work under
so Matt, you would have rather her to hang in?
No, not hang in. To fight like she just did in Jim Hobart's office. She had him scared. She had him on the damn road.
Okay, but Matt, wait a second. But Matt, and this is why when you're Joan in life, thank God you have me as your lifeline. because being a typical male asshole, playing with the house's money as he could, he was like, I would rather give it to a lawyer, and he meant it.
He meant it.
Yeah,
And that's why Roger said, I know these guys. I'm one of them. I speak their language. Just take the $250, because the guy would rather spend the $250 than the $5.
You know,
and I think I'd rather see her go on and have a great life with her son. Hopefully, this new, Romeo.
Oh, Richard's solid. He's fantastic.
And I'd rather see her. I was like, good. By the way, being with a powerful woman in this industry and seeing what she deals with, it was like, oh, deliver me from evil. Goodbye, assholes. Goodbye, Paul Johansson, who I love, and that was a great get. But just despicable, and I think something they all deal with. So I was glad she got the money. I was glad Roger came in and was a calm friend to say, take the money, go on and get your life. And he had a great, what was his line too? It's
about nothing but the money. It's only about the money.
It's only about the money.
And he said, kind of like you've won anyway. And to me, it's like, we got $250. We are away from these vampires and awful people, but going across the board, it's like everyone is unfortunately
from
paying
her
a bit of a price.
Perspective. Roger Sterling failed her yet again today.
Yes.
Yeah,
now that's a fair
disappointing
point.
to her.
Let me ask you guys a question, and I wonder. It seems to me like Joan is an archetype of an unprotected woman. Like she's put herself just from the way she was in season 1. There's no codified male protector for her in this society that's kind of it's so male centric, and it's hard for us to keep our heads around it because in the society we grew up in, it's evolved so dramatically from this time. But this was male centric society.
Yeah.
I mean, and she had no codified male protection. And Roger was really the one we kind of looked to at various times to give her that, but he didn't.
Okay, but can we see one, just what, and I don't want to step on you.
No, go ahead.
So I just want to say this. I saw it different. I actually cheered in my watching this when that bitch of a boss goes from standing and looming over her, but his body language, he crumbles and he sits down.
Yeah.
And she fought him back in such an amazing way. And Matt,
a fantastic scene.
let's go back. Let's come to our neighborhood and let's talk about ABC star from Desperate Housewives, the blonde.
Oh, Nicolette Sheridan.
Okay, who took on them, had all of this, I'll say alleged, but I'm pretty sure it's not even alleged, proof of
abuse,
even physical. And she lost the case 100%. And that, you guys, is in 2000. That befuddled my brain because we have the same publicist. And I remember, and my publicist always goes back to this, even with problems that I have with my girlfriend. Like, listen, you just remember, the big boys don't play. And the fact that she got that guy he wasn't going to he said, shut up and go do your job or get out of here. My lawyers will kill you, right? And when she was done with him, he sat his ass down and he's writing her a check for $250 to do nothing. So I think he got. I see it a little differently. That she got a victory. It wasn't the total victory, but especially for that time, she did get some victory. And I thought Roger. I see it different. I saw that Roger. He's powerless now too, you guys.
Yeah.
He is like dead. He's gonna go be with old men on another floor. He's getting bitched out by, homeboy with the mop head and the glasses. Even that guy's winning now. It's awful to watch this. Like I hope he gets some kind of comeuppance, man. That's a whole
Harry
other thing.
Crane's comeuppance is being
It's
Harry
life.
Crane.
Thank you. Great. You're right.
That's it.
But
To wake up every day and be
Roger
you.
has had his nuts snipped, and that was to me his last act. I listening to you guys. I hope Roger survives this. I know you were going over the death thing. I hope that Don is not jumping off the building.
He's not.
And marrying.
I don't think
All right. Here, Kevin, I thank you for your points, but just because of time.
No, go.
Sterling, I want to hear what
Please.
you have to say on
And
this
guys,
Jones situation.
I will listen to this at home. Thank you
Yeah.
again, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Just off of that, I agree with what he said, but about the whole Roger and Don thing, they can't really protect Joan at all anymore. Even when that scene with Joan and Don in the elevator, and he was like, I can help you if you want, because he was coming right out of that meeting where they were gassing him up a little bit and made him feel important. That was before he walked in with the 800 the creative directors.
The 27 creative
and
directors.
She said, you're too important to help me, blah, blah, blah. But so she was really on her own in this. And I just don't think in a huge company like that with hundreds and hundreds of employees with very established men like Jim Hoberg and
Jim Hoberg.
that they're just not going to give her the respect and status that she had at SCMP.
No, they're not. And I'm just going to give my thoughts in this situation, then we're going to quickly go to an iTunes break, and then we're going to come back to Don. Joan is the tragic character of this series. She is someone who, within the confines of the incredibly, even more male-driven society of 1960, 10 years earlier, she had some level of power within that office.
Yeah.
And it was through encouraging and embodying a lot of the elements that were holding women back at the time.
Yes.
Now, I understand Kevin's point in the regard that this is, in many ways, the fact that she can climb so high and still not be able to get what she deserves is ultimately a comeuppance for that behavior and not for what happened in the other woman. What happened in the other woman, even though, granted, takes two to tango, she made the decision to sleep with Herb from Jaguar.
Yeah. Well, she should have never let that happen, first of all, but also the guys in the office, Don, Roger, should have never
They failed her.
They did.
By putting
Again,
it on the
right.
table, they failed her.
Exactly.
To me, that is irrefutable fact. Did it allow her to build the kind of career that she always deserved? Was it a bargain with the devil? I am not stipulating that. But this is a person who in today's society would be a trailblazer, and maybe we wouldn't respect her. Maybe we would demean her or demoralize her because of the way that she looks or the way that she carries herself or the attitude that she had 10 years hence. But I don't want to talk about men protecting her. She shouldn't need protecting. She doesn't want to be protected. But when she comes looking for support, not protection, but support for what she already brings to the table, she has failed every time.
But this, I think, ultimately is the point I'm making. Is when she went when that was on the table, that was on the table because of who she was. It was on the table because she was Joan. That was not on the table that would not be on the table for anybody else who had quote unquote male protection. Mm-hmm. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like if she was married, that would not be on the table.
She was married. Was she still married at the time? Well, she might have just gotten divorced.
Was out.
She just got divorced.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's interesting, and I think you make it a very, very astute point in that what gave her the power that she had at the time is what ultimately becomes her what would you call it? Her
downfall, her Achilles heel.
You're right, 100%. Tragic character.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that brought you up is the thing that'll bring you down. Yeah. And it's interesting to see the archetypes change. The Peggy Olsons of the world and the other women that came in were much more brusque,
mm-hmm.
much not sexual at all. There wasn't anything about them that was overtly sexual.
Right.
And that was careful.
And one last point is the piece of advice that Roger gives to Peggy is what Joan should have heard at the beginning of this episode. Because every single encounter that she has with a man who is a full-out boorish prat in this episode, she needed to be direct and she needed to not be afraid of making them uncomfortable. She did that when she was with Jim Hobart, and she got as close to winning as any woman up against a man of that size could. But when she was talking to Ferg, there was no discussion of how inappropriate his behavior was. Yeah. There was no discussion of what his behavior was to Jim. I mean, granted, he could have laughed it off, explained it away, done whatever he wanted to do anyway. And I know it's an impossible situation, and I know the level of pressure, of stigmatism that a woman in that position is able to receive. But if she's willing to risk everything to get what she deserves in that moment, why not say everything? That's a deliberate decision.
Well, I think that there comes to be there's practicality. There's life. I mean, if you're looking at $250,000 in 1969 money, when $83,000 got you a penthouse right around the corner from downtown, from Madison Avenue,
mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money.
It's like $1.5 million in today's money.
So I'll take the money. Yes, mm-hmm. absolutely. And you let's talk about security. You need financial security. You can't rely on Richard or anybody else. She's Joan. Mm-hmm. She has decided to go it alone. And it's interesting that they had that flashback that the scene that they brought up before the episode was when she's telling Peggy to stop dressing like a little girl. And if you want to be taken seriously, stop dressing like a little girl. And I think it's funny that contrasting that with all the other women that are doing okay at McCann, that are getting along, none of them were overtly sexual.
But here's the thing: they're not getting along. They're not. The opening scene with her and the two female copywriters who come in, like playing nice and
right.
laughing and making jokes, trying to get on her business. They are desperate. The reason why they call it they'll fight over the crumbs is because they don't get brought to the table at all.
With any of the guys.
They're praying that this female executive will give them work because it's nearly impossible to push through the ranks at all.
Okay, so you're saying that they're there. But they're not they're at the party, but they're not given access to the table.
They're props because the men don't want any part with it. If they sex themselves up, men would want to work with them, but in the wrong way.
So they get Avon or Topaz as a hey, we got a shot at something. They see that as an opportunity.
100%.
Okay.
That's how I read it anyway.
Well, I guess the point I was making was how they were dressed and how they presented themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Very much more Peggy than Joan. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting to see the guys this episode just how Joan is treated.
Not even like now Peggy, like 2 years ago Peggy.
Yeah. Not the new double badass Peggy that comes strolling down the hall.
Love me Awesome. Double badass Peggy. All right, real quick before we move on, we got to talk about Don. We got to talk about Peggy. We got to talk about Roger and all the people in between. I just want to talk about iTunes. The best way to support this show is to rate and review the show on iTunes. Okay, it's quick, it's easy. It doesn't cost you a single solitary dime. Not one penny. So go to iTunes, rate and review the show and any of the other shows that you listen to or that you watch on YouTube, because that is how we get our sponsors. That is how we get great guests like Paul Johansson last week. And this show is only on the air for 2 more weeks. So if you want to help us out, if you want to get a shout out here on the show, if you want to be a part of Mad Men After Show history, then you should go today and rate and review the show or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You get a great shout out here on the show. Let's just see some reviews from Scarlet Knight MI, 5 stars, extension of episodes. I love this after show. I try to save it for Wednesday or Thursday so I can have a midweek Mad Men fix. I listen to several AfterBuzz podcasts on commute. Some are much better than others. This is at the top. All the panelists actually have knowledge of the show and pay attention and not asking questions that were clearly explained on the show. Throwing a little shade at our brethren. And I love to hear everyone's theories on how Don will end up. So sad, only a few left, but I loved every second of Mad Men, and I love this podcast. Might be good from Downey Girl 2. This is somebody who has not listened to any of our podcasts. She could not get through the intro and didn't feel like skipping it, so she gave us a 2-star review.
What was her name?
Downey Girl 2.
Oh, Downey Girl 2, you are a genius.
Is that next girlfriend?
I cast aspersions on people who do dumb things.
5 stars, excellent from 61 Snowflake. Another excellent podcast. Keep up the good work. Brilliant. 5 stars from JS Doodles. Fantastic writing, great cast. I think he's just talking about the show Mad Men.
And also our after show.
Very well written. That surprise Kevin Undergaro cameo, I mean, genius. Enjoyable.
6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Enjoyable. 5 stars from Carmel H. Just started listening, and I'm really enjoying the show. Thank you so much for your ratings and reviews. Keep them coming, please. Okay, so Don, he's quickly becoming a cog in a machine. He's irrelevant. This is a guy who has thrived in the past on being the man with the plan, being the guy in charge, being the big swinging dick who can come and go as he pleases as long as he has the big idea that changes the game. And now he is just another weapon in the fight to make money for this big corporation. He's just part of the grinder. He's a boxed.
Yes.
He is a boxed lunch.
Yeah.
They're all just boxed lunches that can be shipped wherever to just feed someone, to feed a company.
Roast beef.
Beef. He's just roast beef. And he's not happy about it. Ted is perfectly okay with it. But what I love most about this scene, so not only do I love this speech, which sounds almost like Don Draper light at the top, and Don's zoning out, he doesn't even care. And there's so many contradictions in this speech where he's like, he's a very specific kind of man. There are millions of him. He's everywhere. He's a very specific kind of man with very specific qualities. He comes from Wisconsin. Or Ohio.
Or Minneapolis.
Or whatever.
Or anywhere else in
exactly.
the Midwest.
And Don zones out. He sees this plane flying, presumably west, where he is always wanting to go back to
west,
California.
Young man, go west.
Everything's better in California.
It is.
Yeah.
A little drier.
And a little warmer. It's not so bad.
Yeah.
And he just flat out gets up from the table and walks right out with his roast beef sandwich. And
no one really notices except for Ted.
No one
just keeps going.
No one cares. I'm sure Jim Hobart is not
seem
pleased.
particularly surprised either.
No, and I love the look on his face because he's somebody who knows Don a lot better than, say, a Jim Hobart.
Yep.
And I feel like he was almost proud of him.
I think he was proud of him. I think that he's like that's my Don.
And he saw it coming, too. Like, this is not a surprise. It's not like, it didn't look like he was shocked. Didn't look like there was anything weird about it. And he certainly didn't rush down the hall to be like, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
No, this is
I know that this guy doesn't belong here, and I'm glad that he recognizes it, too, before he gets ground down to paste. Period. So Don hops in his car and just starts driving because he's supposed to take Sally to school, but Sally left with a friend because Sally doesn't call anyone. She just does stuff because she's a teenager and she is inconsiderate. Okay,
they're brain damaged. I read a wonderful article. Their brains don't work right when they're teenagers. It's not. This is
an overload of hormones.
Yeah, well, and the prefrontal cortex or whatever part that
and all the marijuanas they smoke.
Well, the marijuana cigarettes and the crack cocaine.
Yes, the jazz cigarettes and the crack cocaine. cocaine. So he goes and it's just Betty at home alone.
Good time for a rundown.
Well, Sally might have called the office, but apparently Meredith is a moron, like Betty said.
Well, okay, Meredith's a moron, but she's also the only moron on the planet who seems to care about Don Draper.
Exactly.
Let me just say, Meredith is she's tough shit. I like her a lot.
Yeah.
She's, Jim is in her face. Where is he? And she's like, just putting up the wall.
Yeah.
I was impressed. Didn't fold, didn't give away an inch.
She's a little hippy dippy marvel.
That's a good secretary right there. Like, I'm not giving up an inch for you, my man. Sorry.
So yeah, he gives Betty a massage in what I can assume, and is it safe to assume that Don will not be interacting with any of the other cast for the rest of the series?
I don't know.
I think that that's a very safe assumption.
So you think Don has been cut loose?
I think that is a good assumption.
Yeah.
Because he's had a scene pretty much with everyone at this point that was kind of like a goodbye.
So one by one.
Yeah, barring a time jump, to me, he's out for good. And the final 2 episodes, I don't think he's in next week's episode.
What?
I don't think he's in next week's episode. He wasn't, spoiler alert, he wasn't in the preview. He wasn't in the preview. So to me, I think he's not in next week's episode. Next week is the wrap-up for just about everybody else.
And
You
then the
can't
last
hang your
one's
hat
him.
on a Mad Men preview, though. Mad Men preview is, it is...
Guilty.
It is,
Guilty, I know.
It is the absolute quintessential, we give you nothing.
Nothing.
Right.
You
Absolutely
watch
nothing.
it religiously. What is he going to say?
Right.
A bunch of words that have no meaning.
Yeah, stop brushing your hair is
Don't talk to me.
Exactly.
Look away. What?
Stop brushing your hair was actually a quote from this one.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. So he's off and running, and I personally don't think, barring a time jump, I don't think he interacts with any of the cast again.
I like that idea.
And I would love a time jump, but regardless, the funny thing about what's going on with Betty, she is reading. Oh God, what's the name of the book she's reading?
Freud. It's
Hysteria. Something.
Yeah, it's a book that has. Freud considered it one of his great failures, and there are so many eerie parallels to Betty's season 1 through 3 behavior.
Shaking.
Oh yeah, she's gonna get a lot of interesting insights from this book, and it's just a very, very funny choice to have her be reading it.
Yeah, it's funny that she thinks that she can connect with people who are, who go to therapy or whatever it is, that she thinks she has that insight.
Yeah, well, insight has never been her strong suit.
Exactly.
So rather than head home, he heads off into the wild blue yonder in pursuit of Diana, who I know so many fans are not a fan of this
I'm
plot
not a fan
line.
of that plot line at all.
But this is a guy who has been stripped of all other senses of meaning, even the one confirmed sense of meaning that he has, being a parent, having kids, and having responsibility, has been stripped from him by those very kids. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to save this woman. He flat out says it this week. I thought I could save her. And it's just not true. But it's almost like perverse and bizarre that he's going to such lengths
what does
for this
she
woman he barely
represent?
knows.
What do you think Diane represents?
The
represents.
old Dick Whitman, or
I think she
probably.
represents him.
Yeah.
I think he thinks that if he can save her, he can save
He
himself.
can save himself.
Yeah.
So if he can rescue her, he can rescue himself from what he's built around himself.
Right.
Well, I'm glad that he didn't find her. That was my only.
I agree. And, how awful for him that this guy comes home, and not only does he immediately see through his BS, he flat out tells him, "You're not the first. There have been others."
Yeah.
She has been leaving a trail of bodies in her wake. And I read a great review that was like, "Sound like anyone we know, Don Draper?" And it's the truth.
Tornado, right? It was a
tornado leaving bodies in her wake.
Yeah.
And now this is a guy free of purpose, not wanting to go home, no home to go home to. His apartment's not even ready. He's been staying in a hotel, living out of a bag, and this office is nowhere to go to. His kids don't want anything to do with him, so where does he go? Anywhere. And he picks up a hitchhiker and he heads towards St. Paul, Minnesota. I hope that he's heading towards the coast. Any other Don stuff you want to talk about?
I read some reviews that were saying that he's probably just going to get murdered by the hitchhiker, and then that's the end of his storyline.
That is ridiculous.
That is the worst.
Can you
prediction I've
imagine
ever
how
heard.
much hate mail Matthew Weiner
that is
would
probably
get?
the worst
Can
prediction.
you imagine? I mean, I would write hate mail. I've never written hate mail in my life. I would write them every week.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets murdered. Not by the hitchhiker.
Oh!
But I honestly think it's a very reasonable possibility that in the series finale he gets murdered.
By what? By who?
By anyone. Listen, life is random. Life is random, and he finally.
This show works. This show's never about random murders.
No, not about random murders, but random acts of happenstance have totally happened. Do you remember the foot getting clobbered in that season 3 episode by the tractor? Listen, let me explain my point, and you can tell me that I'm dead wrong.
Just don't get on a tractor.
He won't get on a tractor, and the guy wasn't on a tractor. He was next to a tractor.
Yes, he was next to a tractor.
Okay.
He was tractor adjacent.
Yes, you never want to be tractor adjacent. Let's just say that's clear. So, Don, after spending a life running away from his life and trying to fill it with things that seemingly have meaning for him, recognizing that none of them do, he makes the alternate choice, much like he did at the end of season 2, which, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there is an episode titled Shangri-La at the end of season 2 when I know the finale is
right.
Meditations in an Emergency, but I believe the episode before that is called Shangri-La. This is a guy who's finally pursuing his bliss, and I think that life will betray him for it. I personally think that that's a reasonable and shocking and maybe a little unsatisfying way for it to end, but I think that it would be thematically on point. It's not the one that I want, but I think it's a possibility worth throwing out there.
If the idea here is wanderlust, right? If the idea here is that here's a man who selected an identity for himself, took that identity, created a life, abandoned the life, succeeded enormously in his chosen profession. Mm-hmm. His personal life has been a shambles ever since he walked away from his family, which was not making him happy.
Ever since he started his family.
So in his pursuit of personal happiness on the back of a false identity, he's been tremendously successful in his professional career, but in his personal life, it's been a mess. But his version of a mess is a 12-year-old adolescent fantasy, right? It's been your mess is everybody else's dream, mm-hmm. right? So but it's not his anymore, right? So he's been completely cut. He's been completely severed from everything. Is completely adrift, and we're referencing the Lost Horizons when the book is about Shangri-La. It's about an English guy who goes up to this monastery in Tibet, to this lamastery, pardon me, and where they're secretly they're collecting all the knowledge in the world, and the expectation that everybody else, all the violent people, are going to destroy the world again, and when they're exhausted by war, they'll be able to turn to the lamastery and say, what have you got for us? And so the idea is that this man has found this knowledge place and chosen to live there. And the getting all this knowledge has given them extended lives. They live a long time in this utopian little society that they've created. So if that's the name of the episode and Don is on a journey, he can't get killed. If that would be horrible. That would be, what would be the purpose? Matthew, you better not have done that. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say about that. All that leading up to a murder, that can't be. He's pursuing knowledge, right? Isn't he pursuing what his truth, his happiness?
He is pursuing his truth and his happiness, and I love the parallel from your description of the book to what he's actually doing, because he is somebody who he's realized that there is no meaning in anything else, and that is this knowledge place. He's allowing everyone else to tear the world apart, trying to make money and climb the ladder and build a family, but none of it will hold any meaning for him, and he is trying to find something else that does hold some meaning. I'm not disputing that. I do want to point to a moment in the episode that both cues his exit and may also cue whatever the final act of this show is, whether it's brutal or not, and that is the envelope that Meredith offers him. An envelope of all the things that were left in his office or in his apartment, whatever, and it's just an envelope full of cash, his Don Draper his social security number, and his wife's engagement ring. And he has that on him when he decides to leave. It's his fuel. And if he sells that engagement ring and he keeps that cash, he could be Dick Whitman for a little while.
It was Dick Whitman's social security number, right?
It was Don Draper's social security card.
Don's.
Yeah. It was Don's.
Okay.
But that's all the materials for someone to take his identity again after murdering him. That's what I'm saying. Next week's episode. So in the car with Bert Cooper, great appearance. They talk about riding the rails like a hobo, and I'm trying to remember what the name of next week's episode is. But it is also hobo and railway related. And so maybe Don is in next week's episode. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're saying the recipe for a random murder and identity theft is a Social Security card, an engagement ring, and at least $10 in cash.
At least.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope that this is not going to be I hope this is not a recipe that's going to be followed, because I don't want to see this. I don't want to see how these cookies come out. This is
fair enough.
I want a part of.
All right, we got to talk about Peggy and Roger, and unfortunately, we only have 10 minutes to do so. Just a fantastic set of scenes between the two. The eerie organ playing and then revealing Roger was so wonderful. I love great filmmaking.
Can I ask you a question? Was there ever an organ in?
No, I don't think so.
No, there wasn't.
There wasn't, right?
It just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah, this is a brand new thing. What do you got there?
I'm like, is that the piano he was playing in blackface like 6 years ago?
Well, I know it can't be, right? It was a piano.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know why there's an organ there. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely, positively absurdist. And he asked Peggy to go get him some liquor, and she refused. And she's like, Would you drink some vermouth? And if I'm not wrong, she was gifted that vermouth earlier in the season, like a couple episodes ago. I could be completely off base about that, but that's what I remember. Oh, no, it's because they shot the Cinzano commercial like 3 episodes ago.
I think you're right.
Right. And she says, you don't want a friend, or you don't want a coworker or whatever, you want an audience. And at this company, at McCann Erickson, which he is avoiding like the plague, he won't have an audience because he's unimportant. They put him on a floor with all the other old guys. He says it's a nursing home, and that's true. He has no value anymore because he no longer has people to listen to what he has to say. It's sad. It's really sad for this guy.
Well, you remember that this whole thing was his last hurrah anyway. Remember how complacent he was with Lucky Strike, and how he's got all the money in the world. He could have just walked away at any time.
Right. So but he messed up. He got drawn into competition with Jim Cutler. He hated that he was feeling irrelevant, so he sold out the company. And guess what, Roger? You're still irrelevant.
That's it. That's rough,
and now you don't have a legacy on top of your irrelevancy. Irrelevance. Sorry, irrelevancy is maybe not a word. Showing my lack of age here. Okay.
Yes,
so
you're fine.
Peggy and Roger rarely ever have scenes together, and it's a really dynamic pair. I think because of our lack of exposure to this dynamic. I loved her rollerblading around the office while he played the organ. Where did
the rollerblades come from?
I don't know.
Well, they were not rollerblades. They were roller skates.
They were roller skates.
4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a
roller skate.
That's roller skate.
She's going real slow on those roller skates. And of course, she now has been gifted Bert Cooper's Octopus Pleasuring a Woman painting. I believe it's the Fisherman's Wife's Dream, or Dream of a Fisherman's Wife.
Yeah. Dream of a Fisherman's Wife.
Dream of a Fisherman's Wife. And he tells her, don't make them comfortable. Why would you do that? That's a stupid idea. And she walks into that office with much swag. I'm just like, you swag out, Peggy Olsen. You swag out and you never stop. I love it.
That was an amazing scene.
Dangling Ray-Bans on.
Better not get in her way. Shit.
Back up, bitches.
Oh, I loved it. Love. I can't imagine there's a single Mad Men fan who didn't love that moment. And I'm so sad that we won't get to see probably these two together ever again. And also, the mystery of who Roberta is. I've been racking my brain, because I could have sworn that he mentioned a Roberta at some point over the course of this show. But through all my research, no one else knows who Roberta is either.
Whoever she was, she left an impression.
Yes, she did.
So what do you think that scene at the end when Peggy's walking into McCann means for her future there? Because if we go off what Joan just experienced there, I mean, she's even has less status there. So do you think she'll run into the same problems as Joan? Or do you think she'll be able to succeed?
Jim Hobart flat out said to Don, Jim and Ferg basically said to Don that they were going to be curtailing her responsibilities anyway.
Right.
I think that she's in for a fight, but to me, this is the signifier from Matthew Weiner that she's game for that fight and that she ain't gonna lose.
The thing is, to me, she's not looking at this as anything but a stepping stone. I mean, she's had a headhunter working for her now for 2 seasons. Has she had him around? And you know, he said take the offer at McCann because that's going to give you the best stepping stone. It's going to give you the best name.
Yeah.
And that's going to give her the ability to move forward. She wants to have her own company. That's what she's going to do. That's what she told Roger, and she'll do it. There's no question in my mind.
Well, I would be fine if that's the last scene we see of Peggy of this series, just because it is such a powerful ending image of, you know, you have a lot of hope for her future, you know, that she's not going to give up this fight. It's a happy ending for Peggy at this moment, I think.
And, you know, something that's worth noting, she can navigate in weird situations where Joan can't. You know, she has an ability to get along and to move through systems that Joan simply cannot do. I mean, there's no way around it. You know, Joan is backed into a corner by who she is and frankly what she is. I mean, guys, we'll take a look at Joan in this era, and there's never going to be a time when they're not going to think of her in a sexual way. And with Peggy, that's not an issue she's dealing with at all. So she's able to negotiate in a different way.
Well, I think that there's also a difference in how they approach the work. I mean, look at Peggy this episode and how she refused to come to McCann until they gave her an office.
Right.
She is an absurd level of almost like an addiction to professionalism. She is a professional. She will argue her point, but she will always remain a professional in the job above all else. Versus Joan, who in many ways she feels that she has earned the right to be done with this crap.
Yes.
Right.
And she's not going to put up with it anymore.
And Peggy's not in that position. And Peggy, frankly, the other thing going on is Peggy doesn't have a $500,000 or $250,000 or $3 million buyout.
True.
Peggy is there to sweat because Peggy doesn't own a piece of anything. So she, you know, it's a very different mindset. If you have a piece of something, you own it, there's a comfort that comes with that. And Peggy doesn't have that. And so, yeah, she's going to be prepared to go left and right and zig and zag. And so she approached it that way. So when they didn't have her office ready for her, she thought it strategically. She thought, well, what am I going to do? I can't go in there and sit in the pool. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let them see me working in the pool because that's how they always think of me. So no.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. It is time, however, for predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Sterling, we'll start with you.
Oh, gosh.
What do you think?
Well, I still think that Roger is probably going to die.
Okay.
Although I don't want him to, because, I mean, who wants Roger to die? But I feel like they brought up his heart thing again last night. They keep bringing it up every week, so I feel like that's definitely on the table. I want Peggy to get Stan's phone number on the 14th floor, and that to be a thing. That's always my prediction, and I'll stand by it. And I don't know. And also, aside from that, I kind of want Joan and Peggy to start their own, like, female power ad agency.
That would be great. I'd love to see that.
That's what we should call it, too, the Female Power Ad Agency. And I don't know. Probably not 1969. Here's what I got. You want to hear from me?
Yes.
I'm going to tell you then. I don't think Don is going to die. And
I definitely don't think he's going to get murdered.
And I don't think Roger's going to die. I don't think that's going to happen because that would be incredibly unsatisfying and no fun at all. I think that Don is going to find his spot. I think he's going to find a. I think we're going to be led to the very edge of Don seeing the path that he could take. Not that he's going to be there, because that would be ridiculous. That would be a fast forward, Will and Grace ending. But I think that we'll get we'll see that hopeful glimmer at the end of it, where he sees his way through to where he ought to be, where he could be.
Okay. Personal prediction: next week, Don gets robbed. The Don Draper Social Security guard gets stolen.
Ooh.
And having no choice and no money, he must admit that he is in fact Dick Whitman.
Okay, I get that.
And spends the finale as Dick Whitman. That's just a pie in the sky, whatever thought.
I think that's doable, though.
That's a legit possibility there.
Yeah.
And has to face his identity for the first time in years because, frankly, he has no other options. And maybe he goes to prison for impersonating another man, for messing up during the Korean War.
There's so many enormous laws that were broken.
Yes, so many laws. I don't think people would be happy with Don Draper in a jail cell either.
No, I don't want to see Don Draper in a fast-forward montage of judge, jury, sentencing, prison.
I don't want to see that either. But if we skip past his, say, 30-year sentence, and he comes out as a 70-year-old on the eve of 9/11.
Oh,
and
gee whiz.
And he goes and meets Peggy, who is now the queen of advertising in her high-rise in Manhattan.
And then they climb to the top of the Twin Towers, and then they sleep there.
Speaking of things that are probably not going to happen or true, that scene with Peggy and Roger was kind of, with the roller skates and the organ, was kind of dreamlike, like when Bert keeps coming back.
Yeah.
So what if Roger's already dead and that was her imagining him there? Like Bert.
I mean, it would explain why there were roller skates and an organ.
Why are you obsessed with killing people?
He wasn't already dead, though, because he came and saw Joan.
He gave Joan advice, unless he came and gave advice from beyond the grave.
Unless it's just weird editing.
That's how they do it in North Carolina.
All right, folks, I want to thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Mad Men After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. We will be back next week and the following week for the final 2 episodes of this fantastic series. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Rate and review on iTunes. Subscribe on YouTube. Sterling Cates, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sterling Cates.
You can find me on the Twitters at Joe Filippo, JoeFlippo, and doing a couple shows here.
Okay. And you can find me on Twitter at Matt Lieberman. That's MattLieberman. You can find me here doing Orphan Black as well. And you can visit LieberFriends.com to get to my YouTube channel where I post advice content 4 days a week. And of course, SourceFed and SourceFed Nerd. I want to thank you so much for joining us. See you next week. Good night.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.